Hello, everybody. Welcome to the LJLOU's bringing coverage of the LJL 2021 Spring Split. I will be your host, Alex, otherwise known as Lex, and go by Mars Swan on the internet. The man in the middle is Samuel, initialized Habgood, our play-by-play caster for this. Welcome as always.
Welcome. Good to be here. We have playoffs. They're finally here.
Oh, and it's an exciting time, and the man on the opposite side of your screen is our resident analyst and color caster, Nymera. Welcome as well.
Great to be here. Start of playoffs, start of journey for us yet again. Third time for us in playoffs for the English broadcast.
Oh, and it's an exciting time, gentlemen. This is when it truly starts to become special because this is when we start getting to see series, which is not something we get through the regular split at ever.
No, it's not. Exactly. We are now on a best of one setting as far as it goes as to regular season games. We're finally into best of series, and that can change a little bit about how people look to play the game, and just also like regular season doesn't matter anymore. That's kind of that's kind of done and dusted with. It matters for where you start in playoffs, but at this point, it's where your form is at right now, and how good are you at best of series, which can just be such a different playing field.
Oh, it really can be. I mean, coming into this one, Nymera, these are two titans of the LJL, really. Like these are two of the big teams that are looking to make a mark in the LJL, and arguably some of the better records compared to the other series we'll be seeing later.
No, absolutely. I mean, I look at Sengoku, look at CJ. These are two orgs which have persevered over quite some time in the LGL. No, they're not your DFM, your Rascal Jasses, or your old day Seventh Heavens, or your other orgs which have been around since donkeys. But they have been around for a tenure now. They have had some results. CJ, particularly coming into 2019, had some great results as an organization. Sengoku last year in 2020 had some great results as an organization. They're back against each other again, though, in playoffs. Only one makes it further on from here.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, I'm going to start this conversation a little bit differently. I'm going to get predictions going first, and then we're going to be talking about why we're in these camps and where we think the game's going to be really made. I'm kind of going to you initialize first. Who are you going with? What's your prediction score as well, as that's important, and how did you get there?
I'm going with a 3-1 in favor of Sengoku Gaming. I
Oh,
got there
okay.
basically by looking at how this team has done over the last few weeks. They have not dropped that many games. They have really improved from their very slow start. They won the tiebreaker relatively hard. Don't get me wrong, V3 were pushing them in that, but they showed a lot of composure there, and this was their chosen matchup as a result. All of that is kind of throwing me towards Sengoku relatively strongly here.
Okay, Nymera, same question, over to you.
So, I've actually gone with CGA winning this series, not just because I need to make up some points in predictions, but because I look up some of the games which they have won, and you will see they beat Sengoku last time they were on the Rift because Sengoku allowed them to get to late game, and then they allowed them to team fight in that late game. I think that's something which is hard to shut off throughout, the entirety of a best of five, and now I'm pretty fearful for Sengoku.
Hi, well, gentlemen, it is my time to reveal my prediction, and I'm actually going for a 3-0 Sengoku Gaming. I truly believe a series kind of moment, an opportunity when they get to pick the opponent. I have to be like initialized here and go, well, this is just saying too much for me. Sengoku, no way would they pick a match in which they could lose, a series in which they could lose. And gentlemen, let's talk about some of the lane matchups, some of the opportunities for these two teams. And I want to take it into the top lane where Paz has the more kills in solo kill category over Nap. 7 kills for Paz, 2 only for Nap. Paz has really been stepping up in this 1v1 matchup, and I'm Team Sengoku Gaming. This, remember, is this is the top laner who represented us at Worlds, and he's definitely been having a pretty decent performance, at least coming into his second split on a different team, or no, first split
First
on a
split on a
different
different
team,
team.
rather.
Yeah, and so if we're talking about Paz, you know, solo kills and stuff, Paz has never really been the player to do that. Yes, a little
Oh,
bit that happened in 2020 summer. If you remember back to the playoffs, then those of you who were there, 1.5 years ago. Gosh, that's a weird thing to think about. You'll remember his Camille games popping off, and the likes of that. He's not really been doing so much in terms of that in 2020, but then coming into this split, looks like Sengoku have found a way to play around this person, eking out advantages in side lanes. And if they do come up with that style today, yes, we might be in for some longer games, but it's good for Sengoku that they have that multiple playstyle option.
where would we be if we wouldn't go into the jungle initialize with you? And I mean, Crash has been really night and day difference between early spring split and late spring split Sengoku.
Yeah, he definitely has. He's kind of come online. I have been very impressed, particularly with his counter ganking. He has been so efficient. He hasn't done that much ganking, but the ganking he has done has often paid off, honestly. He's pulled a bit of a Gilius where everything he well, just in terms of when Gilius was on that miracle run over for Schalke, everything he touched in the early game told to gold. Like, he would do like maybe 3 ganks and all of them would work. It's like, okay, my work here is done, and he would just walk off and farm the jungle. And Crash has been somewhat in a similar place. He's been team fighting really well, but his counter ganking, particularly take that game versus DFM where they got the win, was really been something to behold, and I think that might hold true.
So then, if I may, how is he going to face against the rookie Kassin, who has been pulling out all kinds of crazy stuff?
He really has, because on the other side, I think Kassin's been an interesting one to read, because he has been the battle war jungler. He has got, I believe, the highest DPM of any jungler in the league by a significant margin even. He's about 50-odd DPM higher than anybody else in the league. Basically, because he's been playing things like Xin Zhao, like Rek'Sai, looking to get in people's faces and dive turrets really aggressively. It's been a bit volatile, is what we'll say. We have seen it really, really work out. Hell, look at some of those Karthus games. Again, if you want to see the other side of the coin, look at some of those Karthus games and you'll get the idea. He's been really exciting to watch. He has definitely not lacked for confidence and flair, but there is a bit of tempering to be done, and coming into playoffs as a rookie versus a very veteran squad could be a moment where he gets to shine, but I can also see a world where he doesn't quite reach the expectations he's put upon himself.
So, will the rookie find it, or will they not? Well, we'll talk about another one in a moment, but we must go to where I really do think a lot of this match is going to be decided. I'm interested in your thoughts, Nightmare. This mid lane, are we going to be seeing the return of Ramune, who well and truly set the LJL ablaze when he first entered, or is this going to be Nation's opportunity?
I think this is somewhere which CJ have an advantage. In fact, this may be the advantage they can use to win the series, because Nation has been on a tear throughout this split. Maybe it's just those shoes of the CGA mid laner, which have really come online for Nation.
Something
but
about it.
But he was solo killing Arya, getting massive performances against different teams, and he does that with different champion pools too. I hope he comes out with some aggressive picks and starts trying to wrangle that early game for the side of CGA, because I think that this is somewhere where they can find some success. On the other side, I think Ramune has started coming into their own. I think they've started to find themselves a comfort zone, but they need to make it stick. They need to survive for this to work out well for Sengoku.
The teams are actually in stage.
Wow.
They're on the stage, gentlemen. It's lovely to see them all back there. It's been a while since we've had some actual stage performances. Obviously, with restrictions and everything in place, we won't be able to do much more, gentlemen. We haven't got much more time before we do get into our first match, so I do want to take it down to that bot lane briefly, and let's talk about these bot lane duos, as this is a very two different dynamics that we're getting from the bot lanes, isn't it? Initialized, we've got the rookie with a veteran that's trying to prove themselves that they are far better than maybe some analysts originally thought, myself included in that one more than anything else, versus honestly the team that never wants to go less than 3-0 if you're NT.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. CJ, of course, have got themselves Milan, who is straight out of Scanning Grounds. I know you've definitely bought the stock for this guy a while ago, and he has slowly been improving and getting there. But there have still been some concerns about him plus Alchemy, who obviously was previously known as Grendel, in lane particularly. And then you look at the other side of the rift, and Gango and Enti have arguably now been our strongest laning 2v2 this split. In fact, in some ways, I think it's potentially quite hard to argue with that. Some of Gango's stats have been genuinely phenomenal. I think particularly of this guy's Aphelios. And I think he's on an average of plus 30 CS on the champion at 15, something like that. And you kind of sit there and go, Sengoku Gaming have got themselves some gold dust in that bot lane. They've often, when they started winning, it was through what was going on in the bot lane. And I wonder whether this could be their point of strength to try and take apart CGA, much like, say, Nation versus Ramune might be.
I mean, I would
CGA's
definitely agree with you on that one. It's actually the reason I've gone for the 3-0 with Sengoku Gaming. I'm very much of the opinion that where the game is going to be won is going to be through Gango, because Gango versus Milan in an isolated matchup is just, well, the stats speak for themselves. Gango is well and truly like a cream of a crop above where Milan is currently at in their career. But hey, we've seen playoffs do crazy things before, haven't we, Nymera? I'm thinking of that Burning Core DFM series.
I'm thinking of that one. I'm thinking of Rascal Jester CGA 2 back in spring. We've had basically won a split where we've had real upset potential. Heck, actually in spring, of course, the Juggernaut match went the way of Sengoku over Dead Nation Focus Me in spring. So there's every chance that things go very different to our predictions. There's a chance that these teams come out very different because, of course, it's a new patch. These teams have had time to prepare. These teams have had chance to become the blue shell or be blue shelled.
Become the blue shell or be the blue shell. It would be rather peculiar for Sengoku Gaming to do that, as they are a red team. So maybe they just got lots of red shells and are hopeful
maybe
that
that's
it's
the
going to
problem
work for them. So, gentlemen, now that we've talked briefly about each of the lanes and the matchups, where do we think some of the elements of these teams, and why are you more leaning in one side or the other? I'm going to come to you, Nymera, first. Obviously, you've got the more controversial 3-2, which, if I may add, all of the official stream analysts and predictors and everyone's gone Sengoku Gaming. So you are in a minority camp here.
And this is the risk, right? But my view is, it's been very hard to shut out Alchemy and Nap specifically from team fights. And they're very proficient at those team fights. I think that if you don't crush the early game hard enough, and yes, all of the mainstream have predicted varying forms of Sengoku wins, I just think that it's going to be harder to deny. It's going to be hard to deny CGA their real strengths. And I'm wondering whether that's enough to tip them for the win. And for me, it has been. And I'm hoping it'll upset some predictions so I get ahead of you both.
Well, perfect predictions do get extra points, so if you get the full 5 games, it's going to be a spicy one regardless, so it's going to be tough. Initialize, you've leaned far more on the Sengoku side of this. You're rather confident with the 3-1. You think there'll be an upset game. It might be Crest Gaming Act have that same way to get the win, but you don't think it's going to be enough, and Sengoku Gaming are already prepared to fight back harder.
I'm expecting a game where Cassin gets to pop off and Nathan is there to follow up and be that incredible carry threat he can be. But aside from that, I am expecting, honestly, Gango and Enti just to be a bit of an unsurmountable lane diff for the side of CGA. I think Milan and Alchemy, Milan in particular, has shown a lot of growth this split, but I think the buck stops here in spring particularly. That's going to be a problem. And to make it a little bit more challenging again, I think that Cassin is going into one of the more veteran players in the jungle out there. I mean, on a global scale, Crash has been playing for quite a while now, honestly. I think it's been like 2016, which is a fairly long time when it comes to League of Legends pros. It's a cutthroat business, and you don't get to stay playing for that long unless there's something to you. And Crash has been on a great tear, and Cassin's got a little bit of learning to do. And I think those two rookies going up against these veterans, on form veterans no less, could get a little exposed here.
Yeah, I would love to know where you're siding at the moment, Nymera, as well on the top lane matchup, because I think that would be a very interesting place for you to give a bit, because we only got initialized thoughts on it, so I'd be interested.
So, I do think Paz has been stalwart. I think that his Camille games in particular are very important for the team, even if they're not individual flashy pop-off solo kill everywhere performances. They did well to know how to win the game from their lane states. Just saying, oh, we can free hit towers. This means we can just keep doing this for forever. We don't need to force anything. This is a guaranteed win. And they did eke out those wings. Yes, they were slow, but they were never in question. Nap has been more of the X Factor player, just looking for those disruptive backline dives, which just make the AD carry's life hell. He's done that to the likes of Zenit on the side of the Hawks, no longer in playoffs, of course. They didn't quite qualify. But there have been some AD carries which have just really struggled to get away from Nap on the likes of Renekton and Wukong. I think that if he does manage to have good early lanes, I watch out for this person in the first big team fights of the game. He's always managed to turn up in them.
So, I mean, if this is going to be the opportunity, both these top laners are going to be in an important spot, an important crutch. What do we think champion pools are going to look like, gentlemen, as we will be going in and playing all of our playoff matches on patch 11.5? Nerfs have come in, upgrades, changes to some items as well. Initialize, coming over to you first, what do you think 11.5 is bringing in for this patch, and how do you think it might affect the LJL?
So I don't think 11.5 has changed things absolutely crazily, but I think there's been a big increase of priority on Hecarim, but tank Hecarim overall and everything. Alongside the Skarner, I think has definitely risen in priority again. Both of them are chem tank users, both of them feel pretty damn good. If you play them right, you can kind of play one against the other. Udyr still in the mix. That's always quite interesting. And I think the other one to keep your eye on, again, that's just been rising in popularity, is this Tristana, which I think has found a lot of flexibility in the fact you can play it in solo lanes, and it pairs up super well with things like the Rel.
That's something for Initialize. Nymera, what about you with 11.5? Do you think any of the items being modified is going to do much?
Do I think it's going to change the meta too much? I think particularly what Sam was saying, just in terms of it's some of the priority champions build paths have changed slightly. I think this does affect Senna priority. I think that's one big one in the last couple of patches, because of course I'm trying to remember the last patch that we were playing. Or was it 11.3 actually? I'm trying to remember if we had 1 week on 11.4.
We got 1 week on week 7.
So I think, yeah. I think that Senna is going to be falling down in priority just that little bit. That's important. Both of these teams, well, no, mainly Gango has been playing it. The question is now, I actually think if that works out for CGA, because I think if Sengoku were going to play that Senna, well, remember they lost with it against CGA in that very last week matchup between them in week 7. Because if they play a more aggressive bot lane on the side of Sengoku, I think that doesn't favor CGA quite so much.
It'll be interesting. The official stream currently have on there, so Mr. Producer San, if you're able to switch over to that, thank you, Nymera, for that one.
Just for you.
We've currently got Sengoku Gaming versus Crest Gaming. The stats are on screen, and Sengoku, for a brief moment there, I missed my opportunity. Are well and truly in the lead compared to where Crest Gaming Act are in a lot of the early game statistics. And where do we think opportunities are going to be for Crest Gaming Act on the opposite side to really come in, or do you just not think there's going to be an opportunity Initialize?
I mean, some of those stats are quite stark, honestly, for CG. I think the two on there that were really quite egregious was the gold difference at 15 being the absolute rock bottom of the league, despite being at 7 in terms of game score for Crest Gaming Act. Isn't the best look. And again, a very low kills and assist at 15. Shows that basic CJ don't get a lot done in the early game. And Nymera called it out earlier. That's because they turn off after 15 minutes. They'll have Nathan be really strong, and then Nap and Alchemy will come in with Cassin and really get things rolling in those team fights. So what they will need to do versus a team like Sengoku, who are like second in the league for a lot of those stats, for around like gold and experience and kills and assists, is try and weather the storm. Don't fall behind absolute miles, and then try and come in the team fights where some of your players are really, really talented.
It's an option for them. Players are now well and truly getting ready as they are performing their ritual matchups. They're finally getting on camera, getting to peace out there. Gentlemen, it's going to be a really important opportunity for all these players. Obviously, we can see here kill participation coming out for these two mid laners of Nation and Paz, and there's a stark contrast
Paz is a mid
between
laner.
the two. Well, I mean, top laner. Well, I mean, didn't Paz formally play mid?
I actually think he
before
might have at
switching?
some point.
Might
It's been a while,
well
it's
have
been a
done,
while.
actually.
Could be
I'll do a double
right.
check that, but I'm kind of... I'll have a look. Go ahead.
But like, obviously, some of this Nathan was where you were going with, and DPM wise, Nymera, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think just Nahon is it's something which Initialize kind of brought to us first. Like, hang on, guys, Nahon's really good. If he's doing well, the team's doing well. Look at those stats. Yeah, look at that kill participation particularly. It does really speak volumes of this player. I really love the fact that Nahon has been picking out stuff like that mid lane rumble. Again, that's on his most played champions. Paz on the other side, kind of similar to a lot of the typical NAP champions. I think there is a large top lane overlap in terms of just getting right in that back line, but also having that stronger early laning phase.
And these two players, their champion pools, like these are vastly different. I mean, Nation was playing the Rumble mid before Caps even thought of it, and that was only a few days ago that Caps came out with that pick. I mean, where do we see some of these unique opportunities from Nation? He is very much Arya-esque in those shoes that he has had to fill, and because of that, there's opportunities there. Initially, do you think that's something that obviously this is where Nymera went with it? Nation is going to be the opportunity and might be the point of leverage that Crest Gaming Act have to find wins in this series.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. I was doing a little bit of looking at some stats before this as well, and if you're looking at, say, Nation versus Ramune, for example, yes, Nation is down at quite not the highest kill participation, but he's still 14% higher than where Ramune's kill participation is, despite being down at what, something like 6 out of 8, or like 5th out of 8 in terms of the opportunity for mid lane kill participation score. So this guy has just been getting so much done for his squad in terms of like the damage numbers, been getting so much resources when he's carrying. CGA is carrying, and versus opposition, there is a world where I think Nathan could definitely take the faith that has been granted to him by his team in draft phase and in game, and look to leverage a serious advantage in a couple of these games.
So, with moments away, gentlemen, I've gotten your predictions. We've talked about the lane matchups. We've even mentioned that maybe there's something special or spicy coming. What's one champion either of you would love to see coming out? I'm going to go over to you and first, Nymera.
Just saying, a lot of people have been playing Ari across the globe. Do I think it's good? No. Do I want to see it? Hell yes, I do.
What is good as Everfrost, and that's why Ari's being picked, because she's one of those picks that can actually position Everfrost a little bit more easily with the R.
I mean, Nymera, you have to indulge us a little bit further of why you don't think it's good. Oh, actually, you don't get to do that. Pick and ban phase is on, and we've got Nation on screen as well. So will he pick it or will he not? Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mass Swan. Don't worry, I'll grill Nymera about why he is despairing over Ari right now, despite her being picked up. But before we get on to that particular line of questioning, we have ourselves a pick of ban to get through. Sengoku Gaming versus Crest Gaming Act here for our first game of playoffs in the 2021 season here in the LJL. And it'll be Paz, Crash, Ramune, Gango, and NT making up Sengoku's roster.
On the other side, their opponents today, who they chose for this first round match, are CGA, Crest Gaming Act, with Nap, Kassin, Nation, Milan, and Alchemy. And it's actually going to be the Thresh first pick for Sengoku.
Well, CGA will have to see whether their support can indeed turn this one into gold. Well, maybe not quite a win in the playoffs yet, but at least going a little bit further on, looking for maybe a bronze medal or something first off. First pick came through for Sengoku, though, and that will be NT's Thresh. NT has been really damn good on this champion this split. It will set up pretty well for a potential Aphelios pick for Sengoku as well. And we've already talked a little bit about Gango's stats on the champion. The moment I mention it, it's locked in. It's been thick and fast thus far in the pick and ban phase, but I do want to briefly touch on Gango's Aphelios.
Oh gosh, what I was talking about in terms of, Sen has been nerfed a bit. Maybe Sengoku will play a more aggressive bot lane. This might be bad for Milan and Alchemy. Yeah, this is kind of what we're talking about. Gango on the Aphelios has been absolutely phenomenal. He crushes through laning phase. CGA will be weak side, almost certainly playing against those champions. It's a very strong 2v2, and then also having the ability to have this Hecarim be the engage or even counter-engage champion as well, if people try and dive onto the FLS, is so huge for this team.
Let's quickly look over at CGA's side, though. We've got to note, of course, Nah for Nap is always a good look for this guy. He can flank on it. He can definitely team fight. It's a decent weak side pick. You can play strong side if you get the opportunity. Empowers Nap to be flexible, which I'm always a fan of. And you've got Rel, which is so strong in the current meta. And yes, Graves may be a little bit lower down that priority list in the jungle still, but it's still something that Cass can get aggressive on. So all those picks make sense in isolation. I'm just a little bit afraid for the fact that Sengoku have got a hold of Aphelios and Thresh.
Yes, and you're right, okay? I mean, one of the things is that Alchemy, it has been that big teamfight engaged player, and the Rel is the best champion in the game for that right now, for the support role. That's good. Question is, can you survive lane? Trying to play Rel into Thresh is not always easy. You can get flayed out of your W crash down. You can also get hooked right back into the fray. I'm wondering if we're going to go see ourselves something like a Xayah as well now from Milan. It has typically been their best champion. But against this lane, it's not going to be a winning 2v2. I'm just wondering if they've got anything special cooked up in their bot lane.
Of course, CG still need to look for a mid laner as well, and they'll be leaving that one for the last pick. The Xayah Nymera called out is absolutely locked in. That'll be a Jace locked in for Sengoku Gaming. Likely going towards Paz, who has been given a little bit more freedom to go towards some of these split pushing options. Of course, it could still be a mid lane. Jace, there is a world where that happens. With the hover of the Ken, and they were certainly thinking about it. Instead, it'll be a Zir for Ramone, which has been a stalwart pick for this mid laner. And instead, they will go towards that strong split pushing top laner, which is an interesting one, but it looks like they want to be playing strong pressure lanes in the bot lane as well.
I actually wonder if this hover is now decent for Crest Game Out, because there isn't an awesome way to get on top of... Well, I mean, put it this way. Zoe has a fine laning matchup into the Azir, and then there isn't a huge amount of engagement, particularly the support role, which has kind of made Zoe fall off, because in this split, there's just been so much hyper-engage. That mage in the mid lane has struggled to keep themselves safe. I think this is one of the few drafts where Zoe can make sense, and giving it to a player like Nation, strong.
Got to keep an eye out there as well. That was a late Nocturne ban. That was already with the Hecarim blocked in, so just pointing that out, that was probably a solo lane Nocturne ban.
True.
As a slight aside, and on the other side, I mean, Sengoku threw 4 bans at mid lane, and Nation still ends up on something like the Zoe here, which we absolutely know mid laners can definitely pop off on if they get the chance. And you said potentially a draft here where the Zoe makes sense.
Yeah, so Zoe's not really been a champion we've seen too much of in spraying this split from all regions, let's be honest. But Nation on a high agency carry pick bodes well for CJ. Sengoku having a strong, maybe the strongest 2v2 in the game, bodes well for them. Bits and pieces for both teams.
Yeah, so some stats here for why we are so afraid for CGA's bot lane. Gango's stats on Aphelios, ladies and gents, are frankly ridiculous. He is currently 100% ahead in CS at 15, and that CS differential at 15 is on average 26.5. He gets 1,500 gold plus over his opponents on average, and he has an XP differential of 679 to the good. Those are just very frightening stats to go against, even if I will say I think Sengoku have been a little bold trying to play strong side on opposite sides of the map at the same time.
Yes, that's always that's the problem, right? It's kind of like the cardinal sin of League of Legends macro play. Don't make plays on both sides of the map. That's where things start to fall apart. However, it does give options, of course, particularly for Crash to just start getting in and involved with lanes, start farming, and then not just going for ganks, but just saying, look, if I'm winning lanes, the heat's going to be pulled there. I can start counter-ganking, and this is what this player has done so well.
At which point, I guess I have to ask then, for the side of Crash, where are you focusing? Are you leaving Gango and NT to their own devices, or are you trying to fell or down that bot lane and leaving your Jace out to dry?
So, I think you literally just have to try and get yourself some early information and then start playing around wherever the heck Sin turns up, because Sin has been somewhat of the X Factor player for CGA too. Yes, he's not on something like the Xin Zhao, but it's still now something which you can start getting into lanes with again with that Graves and start bursting out, particularly people like that Jace. Carry junglers rarely like to go towards bot side. It's more efficient for them and more high value to go towards top lane, get yourself a 2v1. It's a better proportional numbers advantage than something like a 3v2 if you go towards bot lane.
I'll also say that if you get a kill topside with the Herald spawn, you can get a hold of that, and that means gold in your inventory, which gets all those carry jungler eyes lighting up, so I kind of agree with you there. See what Cassin does. He has been a bit of a totem for this team alongside Nation, and if Cassin is doing well, CGA tend to be doing well. He's got the highest kill participation of any jungler in the league. He's also got the highest DPM of any jungler in the league. Cassin's just been battle warding pretty much from the get-go here in the LJL.
That he has. Sometimes he has been battling towers early into the game too. Those of you who watched that one game versus, I believe it was Burning Core, where he kind of ran it down the tower and gave double buffs over to an Orianna, maybe not so good from the side of Kassin. I really want to touch on again that early lane priority that we've just seen out of Gango and NT, zoning away Milan and Alchemy off of some of that early CS, and they're doing it with a cull on the Aphelios. That is just so... that is such a power move from the side of Sengoku, and I hate to say it, I probably should have expected this a bit more. I was just hoping maybe it wouldn't in game one. Maybe it gives my prediction a little bit more value for CGA.
So, also worth pointing out here that Cassin went for the vertical jungling start, took away Crash's blue buff, but it was on Vision. The trade, though, is that Crash just turned up on Vision after a pretty well-placed ward on as Crash comes in for a late invade himself. He has got Smite, but he's going to have to get it right here because Alchemy's around to try and force him away. And Cassin smites it away in turn. That is the buff advantage to Cassin, alongside the camp advantage, because he also took away Crash's Gromp.
That he did. So now we're going to have to see what's happening with, well, I mean, this top lane has been the real thing, which has been isolated throughout this entire matchup. You need to see how those CS discrepancies start coming into play. Phase Rush, of course, on this Jace allows you to chase down or disengage from something like the Gnar, and as it seems, in the first couple of waves, Nap's been doing fine, getting ample amounts of CS for this matchup.
He has indeed, and not to bring us back to jungle straight away, but I will call out that even though Crash has lost both blue buffs there effectively, despite having sort of going for the invade, will likely get both scuttles in trade just because of where the spawns were. So perhaps not quite as bad for this Hecarim as I was initially expecting.
No, so Graves is still going to have a camp advantage. I'm trying to remember if he took away a Gromp at the same time. Didn't have my eyes on the minimap. Yes, so that's still going to be a camp advantage over to the side of Kassin. The question is, of course, how is this going to end up playing around? Of course, this Gnar and the hook lands. That's danger.
The moment I go for a drink of water, I end up with that happening. Milan taken to inches of HP, just over 100 or so. That's the flash down from the Thresh versus the Ignite of NT, but the HP bar is certainly not looking healthy right now for this Xayah.
This is another thing to talk about, right? So one of the reasons why Xayah and Aphelios have both been strong in the current itemization ever since preseason is Omnivamp coming from the Doran's Blade, and then also things like Ravenous Hunter too. You often take Domination secondary because the amount of ability damage you get on minions from both of these champions, either with the feathers being pulled through or thrown through those minions, or something like the Flamethrower kind of being dragged across the wave, gives you a lot of extra healing you wouldn't necessarily expect. Actually, what we saw there was the biscuits being picked up from Milan, and I think that's actually, well, with Ravenous Hunter being nerfed in recent patches, things were, it means that the sustain for both these champions in the lane phase down just that little bit, but the biscuits, at least in inventory, allow Milan to sustain up under tower for this next wave.
Crash is down here, but so is Cassin. Milan, on the other hand, has to get out of here. That's going to have Cassin come down to clear up the wave, which I'm sure the Graves is grateful for, but it does mean it's not going on onto your Xayah, and that CS discrepancy early on already looking a little bit alarming
bit grim.
if you're a CGA fan.
It's a bit grim, so the question is, how do you break the back of this push? How do you get your own team into the thick of things? Kind of difficult when you are against an Aphelios Slash, which is so hard to engage onto. It feels like it really is waiting for Kassin to do something a bit more. Paz gets right on top of Nap, lands the accelerated shock blast, and yes, Jace is definitely one of those Gnar checks, if not a stronger counter. Depends, of course, on how the early lane goes. Nap has survived so far, but wishes maybe they hadn't eaten that last empowered Q.
That's one way of putting it. That's one of those things where Jace. The thing is, even if he doesn't hit the Q, having that the hypercharge on your W, the ability to just come in, jump on someone with the Q, and then just whack someone real fast, real quick, and knock them away. It's just so nasty.
Particularly if you pop the hypercharge and then you jump in and then you use it as the melee form, you actually get all of that melee. You get a lot of mana back too. Because I remember when you start hitting stuff with your hammer form, you get mana back as Jace. Just gives you the ability to take the next trade a bit harder. I actually wonder if Paz is going to stop off for something like a tier in the next back. Gone towards the early Dirk, I think that's fine. But as a Jace, you do want to get that tier at some point early, so it does get start getting stacked. Hasn't done that yet, though.
I know a companion and fellow commentator we occasionally make a mention of is a friend of ours called Rail, who just basically has been talking to me a little bit about as Nation just steals away the big rap there. Mid lane hijinks aside, basically saying, look, the moment Jace gets 2 items online, namely the transformed Muramana, he just craps out damage. It is actually slightly scary as Nathan lands a second bubble in a row onto Ramune here. Gets the ignite as well, I think, from the spell book. It is going to force Ramune back a little earlier than you would have liked here.
That would have been the spell thieves, I think. That was a spell shard being picked up. It wasn't. I don't think that was on the inventory on the summoner spell. But Nahian landing a couple of bubbles in a row, stealing away the Raptors. Mid side of the map going well for CJ. Question is, does that bail out the bot side? I'm going to throw it out there. Probably not right now. Oh, another sleep
in a row, and he has to flash to Ramune. He thought the shuffle wasn't going to be enough, and I wonder whether he had a point there. Does force him back. There's no teleport on this Azir, and now Paz could be in a spot of bother. As a Meganar and a Graves looking to dive him. There's the stun, there's the collateral damage, and first blood comes the way of this Gnar.
So that was a wave crash dive. It wasn't a double wave, so it's not going to be the worst thing ever for Sengoku if you do lose yourself a bigger wave. Jace may well have been out of that game. So that's now going to be a plate over to the side of Gnar. This is still really good for Nap. Gets himself up to toe camps before he even goes into that last phase, the laning situation. And then goes, well, now with that extra golden inventory, we'll be slightly ahead of the curve compared to this Jace. And Jace is all about trying to broker those differences between champion powers in the early game.
Get a little replay here, and you can just sort of see it all looming ahead of you. That's a wave, that's a Meganar, and around comes Graves. Easy as you like.
Just catch them on the edge of it. So one of the other things that so you think, okay, well, why did Zir flash? He'd already managed to get some distance with, of course, the shuffle. I actually wonder if that's because Ramune was calling out, I think that Kassin is in range for a collateral damage, and I think that might have tipped off Paz that maybe he was a little safer on the top side of the map. Of course, it was the opposite way around. Kassin was closer towards top lane than that mid lane, and therefore goes down to it. Of course, the Meganar does strike true. And now Sengoku, giving up that first blood, slight gold advantage over to CGA.
Indeed it is, and this is the team we said, yo, they're down about 1,000 plus gold, worst gold difference of 15 of any team in the league. That's a good look. The early game definitely looking at least competitive here. You can see Graves off to a good start, Gnar off to a good start. Though, you know, so like Sengoku are necessarily having a bad early game. We've already mentioned Gango on this Aphelios has been feeling very happy in Crash. Picked up the Herald literally as Krassin backed from that top lane gank, knowing the reset would be coming through. So there's gold to be had yet.
How does he land that?
Squad. And that's another one, is Ramune just seems to be tanking a lot of these. And I think partly that's great praise for Nahir, and Ramane's going to be kicking himself. Just seems to have the guy in his head.
So that one, I think, was really well placed by Nahir. Because a champion's hitbox is larger than a minion's, even if you are kind of alongside it or slightly behind it, you can end up getting hit by that bubble. And the tower down bot is hit by the Herald. Very unfortunate for the side of CJ. All 5 plates picked up by Gango just as he cashes in that cull as well. Huge amounts of gold to the Aphelios.
Oh, this Aphelios is so online so early. Ramune will be back in mid lane in a second, but Nathan will get a plate for himself, and well earned it is too. The man has been hitting skill shot after skill shot. And Sengoku Gaming have managed to get their bot side of the map ahead. Their Jace is not necessarily where they would like it to be, of course. Has been left a little bit more out to dry, but is not necessarily in the worst place in the game. I don't think Jace is quite as win lane, win game dependent as he has been in the past, but he still really wants to do that. And
luckily he's got enough down to do that for him right now.
Exactly.
And picked up the Noon Quiver, so I felt I was going to have lots of wave shoving capability. Noon Quiver giving you the extra damage on minions. I think it's a flat 20 damage on auto attacks on minions. Means that Fellows, he just keeps hitting the wave and just keeps clearing through them. You have just relentless wave shove. If you have access to the wave, you often just get to shove it, and Nation keeps landing bubbles.
Yeah, he does. Here comes Crash into a two-man bot gank into that tunnel, but he gets out of that bush. I called it a tunnel. I don't know why I called it a tunnel. Either way, Crash escapes despite getting jumped on. No summon is burned by Sengoku, despite the face check from this Hecarim.
I think maybe they were looking to get that Hecarim ult out. Of course, this wasn't... so that was actually the Magnet Storm committed by Alchemy. So, a bit unfortunate for CJ, but it does mean that Crash is no longer on the map. They know that Nara is a little safer. It means that the dive isn't as likely to happen. And Ramade is... Oh, this is such a shooting gallery for Nation. This is the problem when you're playing against a Zoe in a winning mid matchup. We've often seen in the current split, as he somehow weaves another paddle star in, Zoes lose their first turret, be shoved around, and be in very unfortunate situations. If you do actually win that lane, though, from the help of your jungler around that mid side, Zoe Unlocked is a scary, scary champion. We just haven't seen it that much in spring.
We can see decent leads for Napa Nation there. And speaking of scary Zoe, Zoe with the lead is exactly that. But it is traded by a monumental advantage onto Gango's Aphelios, which got first turret, all plate, massive CS lead, plus, of course, a cashed-in Carl.
Yeah.
Aphelios has been given bank. He's been given a small loan of $1 million to get himself rolling in this early game.
And I want to... actually check some stats as well on the side of Milan, because I'm actually not sure what his average CS deficit at 15 is, because it definitely has been a deficit from this split. Kassin actually holding this wave topside. There is no Herald to force this down. Having the end of the line does mean that you can clear some stuff out, but Crash is waiting in the wings. Dangerous, I suppose, but at least the plates aren't falling quite so quickly to gang on the top side of the map.
This is what you do with Aphelios and Thresh. You get one lane's plates and turrets, you try and move it to another lane to do the exact same all over again. A little bit new age Caitlyn in that regards, even if the range discrepancy isn't quite there, or you only get your green gun every few rotations. Gango's got himself a lantern to allow him to get a couple more hits.
The difference is, particularly against tank supports, if Aphelios has Severum, which you start the game with, if you pop Q, your Conqueror instantly stacks. You just keep hitting them with abilities and, well, with everything else, and it just means that the extra stats you get in those early trades means Aphelios is nigh untradeable with these tank supports.
Yeah, he's definitely a scary one to go into, especially with the right combinations of guns, as you were kind of mentioning. Nap will get some plates in this bot side, as Paz just playing a little bit more respectfully down there, aware he doesn't want to get ganked again, and that will give CGA the go-ahead to start up this dragon. It'll be their second dragon of the game, which flies in the face of Sengoku's normally fairly significant dragon control. They got an average of 3 dragons a game, which is the highest in the league. I mean, they can still get to that point, but dropping 2 drakes early is certainly not what you want to see. And plate gold is relatively even across both teams. The difference is that Sengoku got them all of them onto this Aphelios, where it's been a little bit more spread out for the side of CGA.
That it has. And what does that mean? Well, just checking back in with those stats for Milan. Thank you very much, Mass1, who's currently checking up the stats for us in the background. He is ahead in CS at 15% of the time, which means he's behind in CS about, 85% of the time. Most of the time, he's behind 800 gold. And this is going to be one of those games which is going to be making that average much, much worse, because you are down all that CS. But it is, as you were saying, the difference is having the plates. It's the difference having that attention across the map, first turret and everything. At least, though, Jace is not in the same position for Sengoku. Now the question is, can Sengoku start... I mean, I'm trying to think of... So Appaman was the last Jace game I think we saw. And in that game, we saw that his team really couldn't leverage the Jace being strong at the right point in time. Aphelios is strong, but the question is, can you also bring your Jace online? Or is this... is Naps going to be a problem for Gango coming into the team fights? Because that's where we kind of said the win condition for CGA was.
Exactly, and I think there's something else that we did kind of mention, saying, look, well, what does Cassin do in the early game? Does he try and sit on this Jace with the Gnar? Is that something he tries to do? And that seems to have been the go-to. He's just been hanging around, hovering around, and it's kind of put Jace a little bit further down in this game, or at least stopped him from accelerating. And then Nap on this other side, has had a strong game thus far, up to that Mythic nice and early. Casting as well, going for the Gale Force Engraves to be more aggressive. It's not the more defensive, brawling option of the Mortal Shield bow. So that top 2, top 3, even if you want to include Nathan in and his strong solo performance in the mid lane, are kind of ready and willing to start some fights at this point.
That they are. So the question for me now is, what is enough to kill this Aphelios? Is it enough to just land a Mega Gnar? My thoughts are probably not. You don't have yourself grievous wounds on something like your Gnar or the first person engaging, which means that you're going to get yourself, okay, hook lands, have to finish that thought.
Yeah, it does have to finish that thought, but of course the bubble in trade means that NT doesn't go over the wall to try and get a flay or anything, and with Cassin around, it would have been a risky engage anyway, so not much comes out of it aside from some poke across the wall from one side to the other. What I will call out, though, is I think CGA currently are winning in the Vision game. Look where all those pink wards, those control wards are. 2 on either side of the mid lane, 1 down by that red buff as well. And Sengoku Gaming are kind of treading on Vision wherever they go right now.
That they are, and that's important because, again, you've got Vision Control winning with a Zoe, and that means that because Zoe has managed to do fairly well in the early stages of this game, as Milan takes some chunk, the Xayah unfortunately not having the same early game, Zoe will be able to play the map in a much more confident manner, fish for those bubbles which Nahon has been hitting with pinpoint accuracy so far. And that is the win condition for CGA in a lot of ways. Stop playing around that, and Paz really doesn't want to be checking into that two-man top lane unit. And Nahon, he's just so threatening on this Zoe.
Yes, he is. He's been doing a pretty good job, but Crash, knowing where everybody else is, has decided to try and go for a bit of a red buff invade, get some vengeance for earlier on. Cassin, of course, will return the favor on the other side of the map, and that's leaving Jace to play under his tower, and with a Mega Gnar nearly there, I wonder whether there's a world that this becomes another attempt at a dive. That ward there over the wall, though, is going to give Paz a little bit more vision. The Strike Breaker there into the back away, into the wallop as well. Nap, that was gorgeous.
Oh, that's huge. That was really well played. Uses the double hop. You only get that in Mini Gnar, and then immediately goes into Mega Gnar when, because of course, Mega Gnar, you get that sweet spot where if you cast your ultimate when you are in that, or of course your W2, because those are not available to the Mini Gnar form, if you cast them in that kind of that orange heat zone, kind of like Rumble-esque, I suppose, you can then immediately transform in. Gets the instant CC chain. The flash doesn't get enough distance, gets stunned anyway, and yeah, Paz, unfortunately, not really winning out on this top lane matchup, which Mass One was, of course, bringing up to us in pregame thing. Actually, yeah, Paz, you know, had himself a good split, but Nap has been set up for success in this game. Maybe this is some extra kind of adaptation which CGA have had for this series, because it's paying off right now if it was.
Oh, that was great from Nap. I've just got to give him some credit there, because Paz had the wall. He thought, you know, I'm just going to back away nice and early, but the double hop reads the flash as well with the timed wallop. Like, that's just, all of that is great to see. Might see a bit of a fight here, though, so this might be Sengoku's chance to get some vengeance. 2 items on an Aphelios, ready and willing for this fight. The death sentence does miss, but the bubble lands onto Crash, which pushes him away back, but the paddle star won't land to come through and chunk out the horse. Big paddle stars coming through from Nahon. Just a bit of a range discrepancy right now. There's not a big setup from this Azir, who hasn't got his soldiers out where he wants to. Ocean Drake down and stolen by Hecarim. Alchemy goes into the backline, but so does Crash. Horse v Horse combat. And it's Aphelios who gets the ball. Yes, there's a Mega Gnar, but he's got no follow-up anymore. Not quite yet. Anyway, now Milan and Nahon trying to get through, but Crash will not be stopped. He's going to come back over the wall, and a rampage to the face will ensure his death. The Feathers get something back from Milan. Doesn't quite get the drawback, and Paz now looking for the shock blast over the wall. See where he can get it, but there's a blue buff in the way. That is a bloody fight, but it'll still be a 4-for-3 in favor of Sengoku, and they get the Drake.
And it gets close. Damn close. Nahon lands some poke at the start of it, and the hooks don't land from NT, nor do the shock blast land from Jace. Things went down to the wire in this fight. Again, it starts with the Leandries ticking down on multiple people as Nation starts landing paddle stars. The dragon, though, does end up getting taken down by the Hecarim, so it's not going to be that soul point early in the game for Sengoku. Alchemy does get involved in the backline, but it's not like you kill off Gango, who gets stacked so many chakrams. It only ends up not being a complete disaster because the Mega Gnar comes out just after that point. Very close run thing from Nation and crew, because that could have been much, much worse for them. Milan also outplays the end of this fight, of course. Very close to getting the root on the end of that onto the Thresh as well, but does manage to escape with their life, and Milan comes out with an okay team fight. In fact, comes out with 3,000 damage team fight.
He has a good team fight. We said this guy has got something to him with this ability to play team fights. I know I've been following a little bit of Kelsey Moser as well. Just
the hook. Alchemy, hey, is this like a Rorschach test or something for Alchemy? Because he's putting himself blindly into these face scenarios, but managing to dodge these hooks, and now we have a Baron start early for Sengoku.
Okay, I was about to make some comments about greater macro things, but never gonna have a chance because that Baron is being burned down damn fast. And Cass is on the wrong side of the map. Sengoku just turn and burn. Azir plus Aphelios and the items in mean that Sengoku just get that Baron without contest.
Oh, break out the cup noodle, apparently. It's time for that Baron coming through. Sengoku just not... Well, they just make sure that CGA just don't get any say in that. They had themselves their 2-item Aphelios, huge amounts of damage, had the chakrams available too, and there's a Leandries on that Azir. Huge amounts of Baron DPS, and there's a fight coming after.
John Sword of Shadow comes through, won't quite get anything other than not Mega Infernum Bomb, it was an Infernum ult from the Moonlight Vigilon.
Mega Infernum Bomb!
Mega Infernum Bomb, that would just be a horrifying combination of abilities. Never let that be in the game, right? Never.
So you've got the Mega Infernum Bomb, Moonlight Varus, because that's the Graviton one. Heck, what are the other ones? Who has infinite attack range for the
Ace in the Calibrum?
Ace in the that's perfect. Ace in the Calibrum. We need to start writing these down. Wow, okay.
We've got talent here. This is what it's going to be. How to turn Aphelios into the most hated champion in the game again. All the while, CJ have done a very good job of at least getting some towers back around the map. Got themselves one in mid, got themselves one in bot again. But they've now got to weather this Baron storm, even if CJ take what silver linings they can.
And this is super awkward for CJ, and particularly Nation now, because that Baron, if it hadn't happened, Nation would simply be running around the map fishing for those bubbles again. You just lost yourself that mid-outer turret, and that's a big turning point for Zoe compositions, because if you do manage to take that, Zoe doesn't get to push up with quite as much priority, doesn't get to be able to have the same terrain advantage, because that means that without that mid lane turret, you don't get to control vision around your side of the jungle so well. And as we're speaking about that, look at all that vision just put down by Sengoku. Nation now needs to start finding other angles to try and find impact in this game, because they're the real player with playmaking potential in CGA right now.
I was giving praise to CGA for their vision control earlier on. I was saying, look at all this control they have around mid into the Sengoku red side jungle. Look at how they managed to stack up some of these Drakes. And then Sengoku just turn and burn the Baron in seconds flat. Caston's going to be here and looking to steal away that Scuttle Crab Shrine, and does so. And gets out as well. Phase Rush on Graves means that he is more than quick enough to outrun the horse, which is quite impressive for a man in a trench coat. So well done to him. That's another bubble that does land, but I don't think there's going to be all that much in the way of follow-up. There was a dark passage for the shield anyway, so Nation wisely probably doesn't portal jump forward to try and get a hold of that damage. The AI bot has been oscillating a little bit, but it's still giving favor over, interestingly, to CGA to win.
I mean, I do think that actually, I mean, looking at the kind of the lack of engage from the side of Sengoku, you're waiting for hooks to land. That's always very dangerous. Oh, big paddle stars constantly being threatened from by Nation.
That will lead to a collateral damage coming through. Box and hook and flay all onto Alchemy. In goes Crash. That'll be a dead support. The horse gets the other horse. Cavalry comes in on top for Sengoku. Gango stays alive and gets Milan as well. Now Cass is trying to run out. And Crash running on the other side as a double comes through for Gango. Zoe is dead. Nap will try and win the 1v1 and fail. Paz wins that one, and AI bot be damned. Sengoku Gaming come out on top in the fight.
The closest of margins. You know what? I think CGA win that fight if it wasn't for the Emperor's Divide knocking Milan out of the feather angle onto Gango. Gango lives, Milan dies, and that means that the Aphelios gets to run rampant on the back end of the fight. This game was always going to be about, can you answer the Aphelios? The answer in that fight is a resounding no from CGA.
And Sengoku got the full ace from this one. It all starts off a hook onto Alchemy, which signals the go trigger.
That it does, so he gets cancelled out of the crash down too, doesn't manage to get any extra distance even though the shield comes through. So let's have a look at this now, because Nav gets right into the backline, but Gango flashes out of that. So you think, what's the next thing to start kind of getting them out of things? Actually, I think that might have been I think that was just the Gale Force coming through. I'm trying to remember if he could get knocked out of it. Either way, it wasn't quite the right angle for the Zai, it wasn't quite the right fight for them, and Gango just outplays in that team fight.
That death sentence at the end there from NT felt a little bit Nautilus hook-esque. I think Nation were feeling a little aggrieved that one landed. Either way, the max range hook that catches Zoe at the end, so nice to make sure they get even more kills. And Sengoku Gaming now find themselves up 6,000 gold. And the Aphelios at full 1 and 3 with 3.5 items complete. And Azir, who's on his way to 3 as well, is a very scary thing to be facing down if you're CGA.
Well, maybe you need to go find yourself a vampire, Sam, and maybe one by the name of Count, because that's 5,000 gold, not quite 6,000. I'm gonna throw you under the bus every now and then.
5.5.
Every once in a while.
5.5. Don't do it. Don't like
it.
We'll round up. We'll round up.
If we're rounding up, if we're being kind, and Gango is not being kind to Alchemy, takes off the HP just for the sheer arrogance of being able to walk up into the river, which is of course not neutral at this point in time. Sengoku have themselves that full court press. They had it in the early lane. But now Ramune, because the rest of the map has ended up kind of working out with the Nash Tooth, starting to take down turrets of their own right. Several tower pushes available to Sengoku, and they're just destroying all the structures across the map.
They are, and it's a lot more golden inventory, and getting them up as far as they can. It's map control, it's a gold lead, it's evened up in the Drake count as well. It's gold where it matters. We mentioned the Aphelios getting funneled gold early. It is paying dividends now. Jace is still waiting on his Muramana transformation, but that will have to wait. Everyone else is feeling very happy for Sengoku.
They are, and as you can see on the minimap too, occasionally you'll just see NC just lanterning Gango forward, just making sure he's getting to the next wave super quickly, never getting any kind of ability to respond from CGA. This is something that they're doing too in terms of like forcing CGA into one area of the map, pulling them to another. They're doing that for the Baron, forcing out a teleport, looking for an engage.
This is the Baron down to about half
Alchemy?
HP already. Alchemy goes in, tries to get something, but Crash turns it around, trying to keep people back. And Gango gets the Rel, who was isolated because Crash bought space. Now the rest of the fight must continue with the man disadvantage. Now is nearly at Mega, but will get it and get out. Doesn't quite get everything. The feathers come through. The Moonlight Vigil lands. In goes Paz with the hammer strike. But it's still not enough. To the skies will still leave him dead. And that's actually a 1-for-1 in the end.
It is, and the big part of that is Gango got slept. He couldn't follow up. He didn't have the range to do so either, because he didn't have Calibrum. None of that ace in the Calibrum. They go straight back towards the Baron, though. The HP bars are shredded from CJ. This is looking for a steal or bust.
He's got a steal or bust. It's taken by Crash. He gets a hold of it, and Cassian can't get it. Sengoku Gaming might go even in the fight, but the HP bars are still there, still enough. And they secure themselves a second Baron of the game. And it's been these Barons that have really clinched them control of this game.
That they are right now, of course, in the lead. And remember, this is, of course, the tank Hecarim. That means that when they go for this pick and Crash kind of re-engages, he's got way more HP to play with. Yes, he doesn't have the full burst, but it doesn't mean he gets taken down. If you don't have Crash at the end of this, you probably don't get yourself the Baron. I do think Milan has been using his ultimate to some good effect in these fights. What it's really been good to see from this person, though, is really just the extra amount of damage they're managing to get out of the Essence 3 of a Sheen autos, managing to weave that in here and there. And actually, I mean, CJ, they're not going down without a fight. Even against this hugely fed Aphelios, they're finding angles in, which maybe they wouldn't have found at the start of the split, coming in pretty strong to this series, making it competitive.
It's definitely competitive, and that's always good to see. That's a Meganar in on Alchemy, though. Not necessarily the target you absolutely want. Sorry, not Alchemy. Onto Crash, I got nameplates overlaid. Either way, it'll still be the horse getting out alive, and they'll get themselves a mid lane inhibitor, and the bot lane inhibitor has already fallen, though it'll respawn in about 20 seconds. They might need to rotate over to try and re-destroy that particular objective. Nation's bubbles, as this game has gone on, as the vision control has dropped away, been a little harder to land, unfortunately, for this Zoe. He's still very strong at 3 items, but it's just got harder and harder for this Zoe to play the game she wants to. She's not as strong playing backwards as she is forwards.
No, and this is why that first Baron take from Sengoku was so pivotal. It's also why the bot on was so favored for CJ for quite a long time. Zoe that gets even into a head in the early game tends to do really well, but Sengoku have found ways to take the map away from Nation, and he's not managed to really have a winning position for so long. Try as he might, he just cannot land the right skill shots. Oh, the grab, some ult misses. The Moonlight Varus not making its mark.
Well, our renowned Aphelios ult certainly coming up clutch in this game. Either way, Sengoku Gaming will now continue the siege. They have 2 inhibitors and a Baron buff, and 1 Nexus turret is down already. The box comes out from Enti buying space, but look at the root. Crash now in trouble, and they're gonna try and get in, but Nap goes in and might be going straight back out. The Onslaught of Shadows goes in and will not quite land, but Gango on the other side gets the kill onto Cassin, who will not be able to stay alive. Second Nexus turret now dead. Teleport back in, I believe, from Ramune, who will now turn up. That is a big shock blast. Nap nearly at Meganar again. Nation trying to get something, but Nap gets flayed out of the crunch down. And that'll be the last inhibitor turret falling as well. All the structures are dead for CGA. That flash called out from Nymeris saves Milan's life, but it will not save the Nexus. It was a relatively close game for a while, but Sengoku Gaming close it out in commanding fashion. Game 1 goes their way.
Oh, they do. It felt like everything changed with that snap Baron play. CGA had themselves some gameplay to play it around, but Aphelios has 200 more years of it. Convincing win from Sengoku, all things said and done.
Well, that is going to be it from us on the Casa desk for the moment, because we're going to step away so we can gather our analyst desk, which will explain this game in significantly more detail. Don't you guys go anywhere, and we'll be back in literally a minute or 2. Stick around.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Des. Initialize, Nightmare, gentlemen. Welcome back to the desk here. We've got the first game, and I'm so far so good, feeling okay about my prediction. All of our predictions are still alive, so we're all fine at the moment. You predicted us go to full 5 games, Nightmare, so obviously a win going somewhere for Sengoku is part of your expectation.
Sadly.
For me and Initialize, though, one on the board. Feeling pretty good, but that was a game of multiple stages, and in the early stage, Nightmare, Crest Gaming Act looked pretty decent, especially in the top side.
It was a real mixed bag because, again, I'm clear in saying this. I did think Sengoku were going to smash a couple of these games, and I thought some of it might look a bit like this. I didn't actually expect this game to be as close as it was coming off that draft, because CGA had themselves somehow not becoming relevant and winning the sideline versus Jace. That should not happen. That's exactly what Initialize was saying right at the draft, saying, isn't this trying to play strong side on top and bottom? And they were certainly very strong on that bottom side of the map. CJ survived that, though, and also got Nation and Kasin active early, starting pushing around Crash. This early game, pretty good for CJ, as you were saying.
Yeah, pretty good for CGA. Sengoku Gaming, though, had their edges, had their options, and Initialize, I want you to walk me through Gango in this bot side and kind of how he became kind of a machine for the side of Sengoku.
When your Aphelios manages to start with Cull, end up about 25 CS, get all turret plates bot lane, courtesy of a Herald that's helping out there as well, and then get some top as well. That is one way to get your AD carry to a point where he can just run over a game. And I think Gango definitely tried to do that. If CJ were playing through top to get this Jace behind, because obviously it's kind of being left to weak side, then Sengoku Gaming put a lot of their eggs in the Gango basket. And a Gango Aphelios basket is certainly one that is wide and big enough to fill with a lot of gold.
Yeah, we knew about this basket beforehand, so that's why we like to invest when we can have the opportunity to, though it can be difficult to know if he'll actually get that pick. Gentlemen, I'd love you to first talk about this first big team fight that we had around that third dragon. There are so many points for this one. Nap obviously having a huge Gnar ultimate, but then Crash coming in to try and get the steal, which was successful. Go on, Nightmare. I saw you.
So I'll take this one. I'll let Sam take a couple of the others, of course. But with this one in particular, I think that a lot of this started off with the fact that hooks didn't land from the side of Sengoku, and he was so close to punishing Alchemy on the entrance to that fight. And this meant that the fight stalled long enough for Nation to get Leandri's burns down, to start trying to threaten those bubbles. Meant that actually CJ had a good platform to start fighting with. There was a question we asked just before in terms of how much do you need to commit onto Gango's Aphelios to really get them down? Turns out Alchemy going in with a huge Rel combo and then going into Gnar was just about enough. Huge fight either way, though, and it ends up going kind of splitting the difference, you know?
Yeah, that was a fight that, yeah, sure, Sengoku were able to get some kills on the dragon, but like they didn't get out unscathed, and it almost looked at points if Paz, specifically with Enti, if they walked into Milan at the end of that, they would probably lose that unless they get the death sentence and combos, and Paz was like an auto attack away, so it was definitely a scary one. Coming round though to this second big team fight, it's the Baron play and it's the ace opportunity Initialize, and this was a huge turning point for both these teams.
Yeah, this is the deal when you get a lot of gold on your Aphelios early, and that team gets to run Crescendum Severum, and you've got Nazir with Nash's Tooth completed as well.
So
Barons disappear.
Where can I make this deal? I'd like to make this deal on a regular game.
Like you've got this, and then you've got on top of that you've got a Jace as well, just because you know what, you need more DPS on your Baron. Like that Baron disappeared in about 5 seconds flat, and they take it, and then they manage to and from that point it's kind of lights out. It was very, very even, but this really broke the game. Said that we kind of mentioned it on cast as well, that Zoe, when she gets to go forward, or it's kind of even and it's trading back and forth, is a very different creature to a Zoe that's going backwards. Portal jump is not great going backwards, you may have noticed, guys, and from before that, when Nahum was having a great time, and it was just so much harder after the Baron goes down.
By that point, we were able to push through. There wasn't another huge team fights. A lot of one-for-one trades. I'm thinking that fourth dragon, where Sengoku were able to get it, but they still trade. I believe it's support. No, Alchemy dies, but then another member on the
I
side
think
of
Nap ends up dying,
Sengoku.
so yeah.
Yeah, and it's trades
Paz,
all
rather.
around
Sorry,
the map.
Paz. Really, my bad. That one.
That's right. Yes. So it ends up being Sengoku getting the second Baron because they're able to just delete it faster than the side of Crest Gaming Act can really respond to it. And gentlemen, it took them a while, but Sengoku were able to just kind of brute force their way through Crest Gaming Act's base at the end of it, Nightmare.
Yeah, so after that first Baron went down, map control just ceded itself over to Sengoku, particularly getting rid of that mid lane outer turret, which is so pivotal for playing Zoe compositions to make sure that you're playing on the other side of the map, you can push forward, getting that vision into the enemy jungle, denying Nation the same pressure that he had done for the rest of that game, just turned the map in Sengoku's favor, and they just put them to the sword. Very cleanly closed out from a game that was competitive in the early game. Turned on a dime, they won it from that.
And what are your thoughts, Initialize, after this match?
I am happy to see that CGA are looking relatively competitive in that early game. That Cassin
Agreed.
has got something like the Graves that isn't necessarily the Rek'Sai or the Xin Zhao that's a little bit more stable. And Nap and Nation still look really good. They have ways to win games in this series. And I don't think it'll be a complete blowout for Sengoku, even if Sengoku still can feel very happy with how this first game went.
Amara, same question over to you.
Pretty much same thoughts. I think that this game was much closer than I thought. I think this will actually be a close series. I thought that was a close game, even though that game was, at the end of it, quite decisive for the side of Sengoku. I can see the tools available for both sides to end up picking up advantages. Just in this game, Sengoku ended up playing to their win conditions just that little bit better. Look forward to game 2, though.
With game 2 on the horizon, gentlemen, we must go on a short break, but when we do return, we'll be back with game number 2 of Sengoku Gaming facing off against Crest Gaming Act. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen.